Hello my friends, it's the 24th of January 2016, Mr. Max Bliss in the southwest of France. Now, it's around 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and this morning when I first looked out a couple of hours ago, it was lots and lots and lots of persistent contrails. But fortunately, it seems that all the planes that are flying in the last 20 minutes that I've observed, and that's a few planes, none of the trails now are persisting. They're all dissipating. So isn't it interesting that this morning, when I looked out, first thing, the trails were persistent. It would look like your typical chemtrail day. Geoengineering through inadvertent weather modification, persistent contrails spreading out in front of the sun, and hazing out the sky. Well, that indeed has happened, but strangely enough, the discrete atmospheric conditions that make it possible for once rare persistent contrail, and it's interesting because I've just been reading a book from the 1960s about weather modification, and it's a nice big juicy book written by a nuclear physicist. There's a great deal of information in there I'm gleaning. He makes the comment that persistent contrails are likely to have a problem with climate change, but because they are so rare, it's nothing they need to worry about. Interesting that, isn't it? Because if he was living near one of the busiest airports in the world, and therefore underneath one of the busiest air corridors in the world, you would imagine that he would be able to see this once rare occasion on a regular basis, just as we do today. That's what we do. We see these persistent trails on a very regular basis. They're not rare. In fact, they're like graffiti blocking out the sky. And it's appalling, because the more we do research into this, the more we realise there is little doubt that any global warming above what is perceived to be natural variability is not down to CO2, not at all. It's down to all the cirrus clouds and all the contrails and other types of clouds which are associated because of the use of aviation. And it has long been understood that it's not very difficult to form a contrail. In fact, they've wanted to do it deliberately for weather modification, which, a lot of things about weather modification was written about quite openly until they realised the strategic importance of it. And of course, you had the NMOD Treaty, the Environmental Modification Treaty, that was ratified in 1977. Why did they have the NMOD Treaty? It's because the Americans were using weather modification techniques for warfare purposes and geopolitical purposes in Vietnam with Project Popeye. Oh no, look at that. There is a persistent trail just being deployed. Look at that. And the Americans were using, look at that, right from the engine. Look at that, no gap whatsoever. So those aren't ice crystals there immediately, are they? No. According to some of the early books that I'm reading, there should be a gap for those ice crystals to start to condensate as the water vapour freezes onto cloud condensation nuclei, or ice nuclei. In fact, that trail's starting to persist a bit compared to others, but that one's not. But one thing is for sure now, we've got organisations like the Smithsonian group starting to admit, we think that the contrails and the cirrus clouds and all the clouds associated with planes flying in the sky might be accidentally geoengineering the planet. Now, interestingly, the idea about creating clouds to block out the solar radiation is part of one of the geoengineering solutions to the so-called anthropogenic global warming dire meltdown scenario. But they intend to do this at a higher level further into the stratosphere than planes already. The planes in the northern latitudes and the mid latitudes will, at different times of the year, fly in the stratosphere. But with solar radiation management, they intend to get planes that can go a little bit higher and certainly make sure it's in the stratosphere where there's less turbulence and less mixing, so that the lifetime of the ice crystals, which are going to block out the sun, is longer. If you start doing all this geoengineering, oh my God, as if, look how low these planes are. Oh, I don't believe it. As if to wind me up and take the mick, they'll just come along and start spraying. That plane is quite low. Let's see how low it is. And look at that. Direct from the engine. What a great example. You crazy guys, crazy people, look at it. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Oh, it's enough to drive you mad when you read all these books and you realise that they are doing this on purpose. This is appalling. So who we got up there? Let's use the old Flight Radar 24. Let's have a look. The one on the right side, the one there in the middle. Let's have a look what we got. Who have we got? Viewling! There you go, my friends. Viewling. That's the one with the dirty trail. Oh, no, my apologies, actually. My mistake. Yep, my mistake. Although I've seen Viewling spray many times. Thomas Cook Airlines, Scandinavia. Incredible, isn't it? Incredible. And now we've got the one flying across us. Tunisia. Look at Tunisia. Oh, look at this. That's Tunisia there. Now, I've been reading about patents, about ions being and plasma being injected into the combustion area to create ice crystals, supposedly to remove moisture. I've been reading about how they were injecting sulfur solution into the engine area to make sulfuric acid for developing the ice crystals. I've even come across one where there's a patent there for using a laser in the engine just to stimulate the formation of ions necessary to create the ice crystals, to seed these exhaust plumes. Oh, this is appalling. Everyone who sees this and realises this is having a direct effect on the climate. This is having a warming effect, as now revealed by different scientists who are investigating this. But the joke is, this was known about in the 60s, before these jet aircraft really got going. This was understood. In fact, this was written down in a chapter about weather and climate modification techniques. Weather and climate modification Problems and Prospects, Volume 2, page 97. Read about it. They expected the use of just 400 aircraft in North America to raise the surface temperature by 1.6 centigrade. Well, today's climate scientists would be wetting their pants and running around like headless chickens today if they realised that the Earth's surface temperature has been risen by 1.6 degrees, wouldn't they? They'd be flapping like headless chickens. Because we're supposed to be living in tremendous fear about global warming. Runaway global warming. We should be terrified. But you know what? Here's a kicker. For over 100 years, they've been deliberately trying to create global warming. That's a fact. The National Science Foundation still had lots of literature I could find, lots of bits of information suggesting they were deliberately trying to melt the polar basin right up until the mid-70s. There were lots of suggestions how to do this, and there have been lots of experiments to try to do this. So, by creating all this solar radiation management in a lower part of the atmosphere, in the upper troposphere, called the tropopause, is it not? See, look, and some planes, look at that, some planes are just flying, and they just have short dissipating trails. But other planes have persistent trails, long persistent trails. So, yeah. It's driving me mad. What's happening is the planes are creating regional warming, but the planes are flying all over the planet, so it's a global warming by up to 1.6 degrees centigrade, according to Manabe and his calculations, which he did on page 97 of Weather and Climate Modification, Problems and Prospects, Volume 2 from 1966. They knew it would create some warming. Inadvertent weather modification, and all these ice crystals, they seed lower cloud decks, so you increase clouds. Clouds are a really important part of the climate, and ultimately we are now living on a much cloudier planet which traps in a lot of heat. A lot of that surface heat is trapped in. Some clouds will reflect away some of the heat, other clouds will absorb some of the heat, and let's face it, we all know if it's a cloudy night you're not going to have frost in the morning. We all understand about the simple effects of a cloud blanket. We understand this. So what's happening is you are getting the planet is becoming super cloudy. It's ridiculous. We don't see clear blue skies anymore. And this is part of the deception. They knew this would happen. Although there is no real global warming per se, you are getting regional warming and you are getting temperatures being slightly different. But that's normal. We're coming out of the little ice age. The planet's cycles are longer than our lifetimes. The little ice age only ended 150 years ago. Cycles are hundreds of years. It's all a massive con. A massive con. And why? Because they want to globalise the planet. They want a one world government, and they want the threat of climate change to be widely accepted by all nations and all the people of those nations, so they will acquiesce to the tremendous changes they want to bring about. And those changes are not for the benefit of we the people, they're for the benefit of the rulers, of the tiny 1%, of the insane inbred 1%. And it's not even 1%, is it? It's 0.1%, if that. We're talking about the elite crazy people who start wars and do all these awful things and lie continuously to the public, or use their governments to lie continuously to the public, who actually use the education system as a form of indoctrination to program the next generation with lies, with distortions, with deception. We've got to wake up. Our governments are being run by the obscenely rich elites, and these people have been plotting to create a one world government, and the information is out there. It's not conspiracy theory. The information is actually out there. It's a conspiracy, but it's no theory. It just takes a little bit of digging. It takes a little bit of research, and you can find it. The information's out there. We have to realise this climate situation is a complete con. There's no runaway global warming where we're all going to have a dire global meltdown. We've been warmer before, many times. Roman times, medieval time, Egyptian times. We were warmer than today. And a lot of airlines, or the machinery on airlines, are being deliberately utilised to create extra contrails, which may be chemically nucleated, where the term chemtrail comes from, and they are being used to create extra cloud blankets. There's another Thompson one. Look at that. So that plane there is starting to curve now. Thompson Airways. It's coming across there. It's starting to do a big curve. They're being used to deliberately try to warm up the planet to support their lies about climate change. Time to wake up, our governments need removing. Take care, my friends, and bye for now.